Brothers and sisters of the Warhammer universe, welcome back to Tortuga's Grim Rosaline. My name is Jeff, and today we're going to continue on with Chapter 5 of our CHAOAS Warlord Titan build. And today we're going to finish building the entire Titan with the upper body area. And then we're going to assemble everything together to get a nice first look at everything. And then finally, we're going to get on to the painting. So it's been a fun process, sometimes a little grueling, with trying to come up with these dynamic poses and little additions that I've been doing with fabrication, but I'm so happy to have been doing this with you guys, and I appreciate all of you for being here the entire way. So before we get going here, I need you to do all those YouTube things that you do so well. Down below, click on like, share, subscribe, and now that that's out of the way, let's do this. So here's a list of all the items that we'll be using throughout this project. So here are all the items that we will primarily be using for today's build. First thing first is we always want to make sure our safety is taken care of. And for that, we always need a mask and eye protection. No, not this. This is really cool, but won't be used for this. Instead, we will be using our trusty respirator and safety goggles. We want to make sure, especially using carbon fiber and resin, that none of these particles get into our eyes or our lungs. Now, to be cutting off the sprues and trimming any pieces that we do not need, as well as modifying for our fabricated pieces, we'll be using a model saw, clippers, and an X-Acto knife. Smoothing down everything, we have our nail file and Dremel. For small pieces, I always keep my tweezers on hand, and making sure to get rid of any gaps with resin, which will happen, we have Vallejo's plastic putty. For non-weight-bearing items to glue together, we will be using the BSI super glue, and for any weight-bearing, we'll be using the 5-minute epoxy. Speaking of weight-bearing, with resin, we will be using carbon fiber rods. This is a 3.0 millimeter rod that we will be drilling in and putting in. And speaking of drilling, we will have our drill, and you can see here that I have an inch taped off so that I can cut these and drill into the areas to make them more sturdy. And to hold everything together, we have our trusty Irwin grip clamps. So we are going to start off with building the central area of the torso, and you can see already on the base we have our magnets, which I covered in Chapter 4 of Magnetizing Your CHAOAS Warlord Titan. So check that out if you want to go back through and have a run through of how to magnetize everything. But with this, what we're going to do is we're going to start dry fitting all of the pieces of the torso. With resin, it is extremely important that you always want to dry fit, and re-dry fit everything. In a lot of the cases, I'll be very honest with you, with the torso area, this is where I have to use my hair dryer the most to re-straighten up pieces that might have gotten curved or just warped in any way, shape, or form. Now, with this one, you're going to see I'm going to keep adding pieces before I start trying to put any type of epoxy or glue down, because there are a lot of pieces that need to fit exactly in the right place. Trust me, along this process, dry fitting and your hairdryer are going to be your best friends. So keep going back and forth between those as many times as you have to before starting to apply your glue. So now that all my pieces are fitting together properly and I'm feeling really confident, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take my X-Acto knife and I'm going to start roughing up all of the edges on all the pieces to make sure that that super glue really has something to grab into. Once I have taken care of that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start super gluing piece by piece, and then making sure, giving a little bit of time that it's sticking in the proper place, and then adding the next pieces. So one thing you're going to see that I do here is when I'm putting pieces together and there are corners, I'm going to go on that inside and I'm going to add super glue to those corners just to make sure that everything really locks in tight. Also, while you're going through and gluing these pieces together, if any of them start feeling like they might have warped back in or being a little difficult to attach to, go ahead, bring that hairdryer out and reheat those surfaces. This is going to be the perfect time to make sure everything is aligning as perfect as possible. And again, once everything's aligned, just double check to make sure that you have everything roughed up with an X-Acto knife, and go ahead and super glue all those pieces together. And I really recommend, when building the center of the torso, especially with all of these pieces, hold on to them after you glue them for a while, like a good 5, 10, 15 seconds, just to make sure that they really attach themselves and lock into place. So we're going to keep going, and we're going to move on to the upper pieces of the torso. And again, we're going to do the exact same thing that we were doing before. We are going to dry fit these to make sure that everything is fitting exactly as possible. If anything is bent or warped, we're going to use our hairdryer to re-go over and warm those areas to straighten them back out. Once we've dry fitted enough times and feel really comfortable with this, then we are going to go ahead and rough up those areas with our X-Acto knife and go ahead and use our super glue. And as you can see, while I add these upper side walls, I will put super glue on the inside of the areas connecting the lower wall to the upper wall to give it a little bit more strength, and then I will hold those pieces to keep them in place for a good 10 to 15 seconds. Once we have our upper side plates and our front plate all super glued in, we're going to take one of our larger clamps and we're going to go ahead and clamp that down to lock everything snug into place for a good 20 minutes. And while we're doing that, we can use this time to work on the top of our Titan torso. And we're going to do the same thing that we were doing before. We're going to dry fit this, make sure it's fitting every area nice the way it should be. If we have to use a hairdryer on the upper side walls or on the top of the Titan piece, we can easily go through that process. And yes, I always go through the instructions while I'm going through everything at least 10 times over to make sure I don't put anything in backwards or miss a step. Because trust me, I've done it in the past. So now that we feel confident that that top piece is going to fit nice and smoothly in, we're going to go ahead and take our X-Acto knife, rough up around the sides to that, as well as the top of the side walls and front wall, and then we're going to super glue those into place. And once we have that super glued in, we're going to bring out those clamps again, and we're going to clamp on the top to the front of the Titan torso and to the back of the Titan torso, just to make sure that everything is nice and firmly super glued and locked in place. With the main sections of the torso dried, it's now time to work on the upper exhaust system that will be attaching to the top of the torso. And again, we're going to start with dry fitting these to make sure that everything is fitting properly. And chances are, like you're seeing with me, you're going to have to start bust out the old hairdryer again and start heating up all the warped and bent pieces to straighten everything and then re-dry fit again. And once we have everything fitting properly, we can go ahead, take out our X-Acto knife and start roughing up all the areas that we're going to be using the super glue on. And again, you're going to see that I'm going to be pressing down on all these pieces just to make sure when the super glue is on that it's sticking to exactly how it should be and not popping up in any way. And that's going for the central, front, and rear exhausts. Once we have one side done, we're going to do the exact same to the other. Next, we're going to put the side thrusters on the sides of each of the torso. We're going to dry fit these and make sure that everything is lined up nicely. Then we're going to take our X-Acto knife and we're going to scruff up those areas both on the thruster and the lower torso. And once we're happy, we're going to super glue those on and make sure that they're locked into place. You're going to see here, while the super glue is drying, I'm going to put the Titan torso up on the legs, and I'm just going to side to side to make sure that everything is there and nothing is rubbing on each other. And while we're at it, let's go ahead and put those heads on just to make sure everything is connecting and looking awesome. And now it's time for the fun pieces. And a lot of people say that this is probably one of the most difficult things, but I'm going to show you a way to make this work without stressing yourself out too much. And this is putting the shoulders onto the Titan's torso itself. So the reason why this is so stressful and difficult to some people is because you have to reinforce this with the sheer weight that is going to be on these shoulder pieces from the arm weapons. So what I do is I will dry fit the shoulders, and then once I'm happy with that, I will scruff them up with my X-Acto knife, and then I'm going to use a 2-part epoxy, and I'm going to put that epoxy on and attach that and let that sit for a good 30 minutes. While that is sitting, I'm going to mark on each of the 4 corners about a little bit in to like a flat area on there where I'm going to drill. And the reason why we're going to drill is we're going to put some of those carbon fiber rods into on each of the corners from the shoulder piece all the way into the Titan torso. And this is going to help relieve any of the weight so it's not going to pull these pieces off of the torso itself. Once we feel comfortable that it's dried enough, I'm going to take my drill with the drill bit that's sized up to my carbon fiber rods, and I'm going to drill in each of those 4 areas that we marked off. And then with a super glue, I'm going to take about 1 inch long of each of the carbon fiber rods and slide them in, making sure that there's a little bit hanging out outside, that we have a full lock in between the shoulder and the torso itself. And as you can see, I am basing it against my legs while I'm doing the drilling and the posting because of how it rests. It doesn't sit on a flat surface well at all. And I've been fabricating for years, if not decades, and I'm very comfortable with the way I'm doing this. If you're new to this, don't do this way. Always safety first. But for me, I am very comfortable with doing this. And of course, once we have one side all dried and finished, we're going to flip that Titan around and we're going to do the exact same to the other shoulder piece. With the hardest part of this build out of the way, it's time that we start working on the upper armor assembly as well as the shoulder armor structure assembly. And we're going to, of course, dry fit everything, and we're going to be using our handy dandy hairdryer because this is resin and there's going to be a lot of warps, especially with the cable assembly that's going onto the shoulder armor structure. Now, important thing to notice here is we are not gluing the shoulder armor structure in yet. We want to make sure that we get the full upper armor assembly set up, attached, and screwed, glued, everything else in before we put these on. So we're going to focus on the arm assembly. It's a 3-piece assembly with pieces that connect directly to the shoulder, the mid area to center the arm, and the coupler that connects to your arm weapon. And you can see here that we briefly start putting on magnets. That was all covered in our previous video. If you have any questions with that, feel free to go back to look at that video and it'll explain everything you need to know. So after dry fitting both these pieces together as well as to the shoulder and figuring out the exact positioning you want this upper arm to be set at, we're going to scruff up these with the X-Acto knife and super glue them together and then clamp them tight to make sure that that fitting stays locked in. So after those pieces are dried and we take the clamps off, we're going to insert 2 half-inch carbon fiber rods into the joint section to make sure that the load bearing is strengthened so they can hold the arms with no issues. And how we're going to do this is we're going to take each of these and we're going to take a drill with a drill bit sized to those carbon fiber rods, and we're going to drill them into the areas on each side of the center of the little cog logo that would be perfectly centered to where those pieces are glued together. And once we drill those areas out, we're going to slide those carbon fiber rods in and super glue them into place. Next, we're going to attach the coupler piece that connects the Titan's upper arm to the Titan arm weapon. So we're going to dry fit this, make sure it fits nice and snug, and then we're going to take our X-Acto knife and scuff up the areas on the upper arm and the coupler that connects to, and we're going to use a 2-part epoxy and connect these in to make sure it fully locks into place. Again, once I apply the epoxy and put these in, I make sure it's at the exact position I want them to be, and I will let them sit for about a good 20 to 30 minutes to make sure that epoxy takes that full locking in effect. While we're letting the epoxy dry, we can go ahead and start gluing on some of the side appendages like the weapon mounts and the side armor rail attachments onto each side of the Titan body. And again, we're going to dry fit these several times, make sure everything fits in place. If anything needs to get straightened out or unwarped, we're going to use our hairdryer, and then we can go ahead and super glue each of these into place. So one important thing to note is here, even though I'm gluing on all the weapon mounts, I'm not putting any of the cannons actually on yet. I want to make sure that we get all of the build done before we connect those onto the Titan body. Now that the upper arm assemblies are all completed and dried, we can go ahead and connect them to the shoulder sockets. And how we're going to do this is we're going to dry fit them again, make sure that everything fits nice and evenly, get them in the position that we're happy with. Then once we see that, we're going to go ahead and scuff up both areas on the upper arm assembly and the shoulder sockets to where they're going to connect. And we're going to use a 2-part epoxy and coat both of those areas and put each of the arm assemblies into those sockets. And we're going to let them sit for, again, 20 to 30 minutes. Once the epoxy is all dried, we need to strengthen the arm assembly to the shoulder socket. My first Titan, what I did is I did several carbon fiber rods from the sides of the shoulder into the arm assembly. This time around, though, I decided to go a little bit simpler and actually made it even stronger. I took about an inch and a half screw and I drilled it directly from the top of the shoulder assembly into the arm assembly areas, strengthening everything in there. And we won't have to worry about it being seen because the shoulder armor will go directly over this and cover it. With the shoulder and upper arm assemblies all finished, we can go ahead and re-dry fit on that shoulder armor structure and then go ahead and super glue those into place. Make sure you align these shoulder structures fit in not just into the slot onto the torso, but onto the cabling structure, that it fits exactly how it should snug onto the shoulder assembly itself. And again, I always like to hold these into place for a good 15-20 seconds just to make sure that the super glue really gets that nice, strong connection onto the area and that these don't shift at any point. So now that all the main assemblies are finished on the Titan's torso, we can go ahead and focus on the last pieces. And that would be the 4 different types of cannons that would be on the Titan on the front and back, the shielding generators that would go on the top, and the railings that would be on the back of the Titan's torso. And with these, you're definitely going to want your hairdryer handy because we are going to have to re-straighten warped out pieces, especially between the cannons and the railings. Once you're comfortable with how everything looks, go ahead and super glue those all onto there. I recommend always putting some super glue on the cannon pieces as well. I know you can heat them to make sure that they fit snug, but I have found in traveling that these will sometimes fall off, and I'd rather have them attached and be secured than take a chance. And with that, our Titan's body is completely finished, and it's ready to get primed and painted. But before we finish this video, I wanted to show you some of the really fun aspects of working with fabrication when you're printing out pieces for a custom build. Now, when you're doing this, no matter what, things are not always going to fit properly and align exactly how you want. So that's where you're going to have to reshape, resize, and even sometimes change the way that things will mount to your builds. And from several of my small clips here, you can see how I had to resize the canopy overhead and a lot of my connections where I thought things were going to be mounting fine between the Titan and the armor pieces. I wound up sanding a lot of those off with my Dremel, and I will be using a milliput substance to adhesive connect all of these to the Titan. And important to note, you're dealing with resin, so anytime you are doing any sort of drumming, cutting, anything, wear your mask and eye protection because trust me, as you can see here, resin particles are gonna go everywhere. But in the end, it's completely worth it. As you can see here with me dry fitting and just tacking the armor pieces on, this is already looking absolutely amazing. And there you have it, a fully built CHAOAS Warlord Titan. I hope you appreciate this, and I hope you might have learned something new that you can use on your next builds. And remember, like I always say, Grim for the Grim Rosaline.